This is Gary Atencio with CNTV, and today we're in Colorado Springs, Colorado. We're at Transition Counseling Services. Since 1985, they have been providing professional counseling services to individuals, groups, families, Colorado Springs area, and a few communities. Jan, let's begin with you. Basically, for over a quarter of a century, really, you have been involved in this industry, be it a case manager or certified professional. What is it that got you involved back then?
As a kid, I had a sign on my forehead that says, "Tell me everything you've been thinking and feeling." And I like to know what makes people tick. And it just seemed to expand from there. I love what I do. I really do. I like seeing the aha for people.
That is great. Right now, I mean, in our society, we live in complex times. It seems we're a go-go society. Why do you think professional services, what you offer, is more in demand today, possibly than even 30 years ago when you began?
I think in part, they're more open to getting some kind of service. There's not the same kind of stigma. But because things are so chaotic, and you said really fast-paced and go, everything seems to be more disposable. So anyone who's wanting to hang on to the relationship, keep their family more intact, they have a little bit of an incentive to do that. So I applaud that, anybody who's wanting to work on improving.
I imagine for someone out there, they get in a situation, it can be rather overwhelming when you feel like you're in a situation that change is not possible. What would you say to somebody like that who is possibly going through that?
First of all, change is a really fluid kind of thing, and most often you need to know what the change is for. If you're doing it for yourself, that's perfect. If you're trying to do it to keep someone, it's not as productive. And also to take things in really small bites, because if you wake up one morning and go, okay, I have to have a completely different life than what I do now, you're going to be disappointed. It will be almost impossible to accomplish that. Small bites, easily done.
That is interesting. I hear more and more throughout the media, speaking with friends, anxiety is something that a lot of people are experiencing. Many times it can turn into depression. How are you able to help folks with something like that?
Again, it's kind of a focus on, do you know where your anxiety stems from? And the truth is, the kind of world that we live in now, there's a lot of things to be fearful of or uncertain because we don't have control. And that's a big issue for most of us, that we don't have control over things. So I do relaxation techniques. I have people kind of figure out how they can ground themselves, figure out what's important, and more than anything else, understand what you can and cannot control. So.
Interesting. Be it phobias or anxiety, depression, do some of these things come about because of a trauma that people have been through in the past?
Absolutely. We see a lot with soldiers coming back, a lot of PTSD, but that also is across the board. If you've had abuse in the background, you've lost someone, and for example, today, 9/11, people are reliving huge trauma, even if they didn't lose someone specifically. So trauma has a huge impact.
Wonderful. What have you been providing? You've been successful. You've been able to take a listening approach, help people, guide them. They're looking for practical solutions out there. Share with me the thought field therapy. What does that kind of consist of?
Some people are familiar with EMDR, which is a kind of a process of getting a traumatic incident and the emotions of it and kind of reducing it. And energy psychology is really gaining a lot of momentum. And it's a very simple thing about being able to tap different parts of the body while you're thinking of something, like giving it a 10. This is just off the charts for me. And as you do it, it's really hard to explain why it works, but it does. It calms you down. There's no medication. The practitioner doesn't put their hands on you, just show you how to do it. And it's something that people can easily do for themselves. You know, whatever the topic is, it doesn't have to be just one. They can use it in any circumstance. it's pretty fascinating.
It must be fascinating, like you said, kind of an aha moment when people come across this and realize they have control of something. It always amazes me that in school we are taught so many things growing up, but yet we're not taught things like relaxation techniques or any of those things. Are you finding people are coming back around and realizing maybe they weren't equipped with all the tools to handle life straight on?
Very much. If in school they're taught, whether it was shop or how to balance your checkbook. Okay, balancing your checkbook is a great thing, but not just some key pieces about how to be responsible for yourself, how to interact with other people, even just the basics of good communication. We're just thrown into it sometimes, and we expect one another to figure out how to have healthy and strong lives or really powerful relationships without any tools. So, yeah, it's...
Speaking of relationships, obviously there's a lot of we can do for ourselves, self-talk and whatnot. But when you start building a relationship, many times, do you feel it's necessary to have counseling even before the engagement, even before the marriage?
I'm a fan of it. I've been married for over 40, and there are things that I wish I'd known at the outset, because when you get married, you think you know everything and you don't. So I really encourage pre-engagement or pre-marital counseling. There's a lot of things that you can address before it becomes a critical issue. And frequently people are talking with one another and they had no idea that the other one felt as they did. So I'd say it's a good idea to get some of those things out of the way.
Out of the way, that leads me to my next question, which was the fact that I know for myself, for many men, counseling is something that we veer away from. Share with us a little bit, what kind of communication goes on, let's say, in marriage counseling?
Well, oftentimes people come in at the last minute when things are really on a slippery slide, and oftentimes they want the therapist to side with them. So I try and get past that very quickly. What is your key issue? And I want people to feel comfortable talking about their feelings and what they've tried that they think has not worked and what they want. Men often are much more responsive than we give them credit for, and I think it has a lot to do with, will I be heard? Will I be respected? Because respect is huge, as you know, for everybody in general, men in particular. So
yeah, I believe that. The obviously these problems not only exist between the two people that are engaged, but also many times the entire family. Is family counseling something that is performed here as well?
Yeah, I do family counseling, and there's a lot of benefit. It's a lot of work, because again, people often don't come until there's like a lot of fracturing, and the more people you have in the room, whether it's this size room or other, there's all these different personalities, and you're trying to address each of those personality types and what their main issue is. So it can be very powerful. It's also very challenging.
Like you said, many times we wait until it's grown further down the road. There's abuse issues many times. What is basically structured domestic violence? Is that something that we look for, and should we take care of it before it arises?
You're asking about the treatment for DV? I've been doing DV groups since '87, and there's such a wide umbrella, I guess, of what constitutes DV. And most often people think just physical abuse, but it's verbal and emotional and isolation and all number of things. So oftentimes people are very surprised when they hear someone got a DV charge. There is a structured program, but there's a lot of the psychological piece to it, which is where probably most of the power comes from change. When you have a group of 10 people and they realize it's not just me, and there's something to be learned from one another. It's often my honor to be around people, and I'll say specifically men, although I have women's groups. But watching men work it's very gratifying.
Ultimately, making sure there's a safe environment as well, I imagine, is something that you're very in tune to.
Absolutely, and I do not do specific victims groups here. There's a number of wonderful agencies that do, but everything that the underpinning of working through DV is making sure that family is safe, and even that the person who has committed some act, make sure that they're safe for themselves as well. They know how to exit, they know how to time out. Yeah.
All things we should have learned many moons before. Viewers, take a look at the bottom of the screen right there. What you're going to see is her website. First of all, on the website is their contact information right there. You've got the phone number as well. That is Transition Counseling Services located here in Colorado Springs. Really as simple as just reaching out and getting a consultation. Is this something that takes place here or can it be done over the phone?
It can be here, but I can do phone, email, Skype. It kind of depends on what the person is most comfortable with. If they'd like to do an initial, face-to-face, that's fine. But we live in a time where distance counseling is much more acceptable. So I'm on Psychology Today. If they wanted more information about that, they could also find me there.
Interesting. So basically, depending on what is required, they can come to you, or you can actually do, like you say, Skype or telephone. We've talked a lot about personal, family. Are issues sometimes coming up in the corporate world as well, where intervention needs to be taking place there?
I think sometimes corporations are worried about the transferring of domestic violence issues being brought into the workplace, understandably, because it happens. So coaching in the general sense in the workplace can be very, very effective and very powerful, but also having folks understand that if you take your personal business into your work or vice versa, you impact both sides. So commend businesses that work on that, making sure everybody is safe.
You have been successful for over a quarter of a century. Your style is that of...
I feel old.
I know, I understand. Many years folks have been coming to you. Basically, your style is that of warm, empathetic, encouraging, humorous. Does it make you feel going knowing that folks place their trust in you in such a private setting?
It really, really does. I don't take it for granted. I try never to take it for granted. And I think part of the reason I've been able to do what I do for so long is that they see that in me, and then I'm able to reflect it, bring it back to me, give it back to them, and it's you build a close relationship with a client, and that helps them work what they need to do.
Excellent. Last time viewers, take a look at the bottom of this screen. Once again, that is Transition Counseling Services located here in Colorado Springs. Obviously, taking care of the folks here locally, but even through Skype or long distance, you can reach out that way as well. And just remember that you're not alone, and there are professionals out there that can help you through things that maybe you never learned before, and now you're open to. This is Gary Atencio with CNTV. And if you don't know, now you know.